I was going to try to get by without the microphone, but when I saw Keith use the microphone, I knew that I definitely needed it. I mean, he's got about as big a voice as anybody I've ever heard. I am Mike Staton. I've been with Extension for 23 years, and I've been in probably 5 assignments. I basically have to move before the tar and feathers hit me. It's basically what happens, and so we'll see if how long this works here. But I am excited about the SMaRT program. It's an opportunity to really help improve soybean yields and profitability. And I just want to clear something up. Keith mentioned that we're going to use your tractor, your planter, your sprayer, your combine. I'm not going to touch any of that equipment. Okay, so you can rest at ease. If you participate with us, I'm not going to be, your equipment's not going to be at risk. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and jump right into this because there is a lot of projects that I want to cover, and I'm not going to be able to cover all of them because of the time constraints that we have, but as Keith mentioned, in that publication, they are all covered there. First thing I want to talk about is Martin talked about the Taro Project with Bob and Phil and the partnership that they have up here in the thumb. And if you look at their book, or you look at the Mid-Michigan book, or you do any internet searching on research, this is going to be one of the most common designs that you're going to find, is the randomized complete block design. I think in the Taro book, you basically just call it RCBD throughout the book. And so what is an RCBD? And I think it's important to kind of know what that is, because it's really important to, and why we do it. The reason that we do this is all too often when farmers try to evaluate new products, new practices, new equipment, what's the most common way of doing that? A side-by-side. Just one strip of this, one strip of that. The problem with that is when you do that, you almost have just a 50-50 chance of one being better than the other. You have no way of really knowing with any degree of certainty whether that piece of equipment, whether that practice, product made you money. This is what we would call experimental design, and it's designed to take that field variability out of there. So, in the randomized complete block design, the whole principle is, let's just look at the area between these two bold bars, and let's pretend that that's a field, and the way that would work is your headland would probably be along here somewhere. We want to be off your headlands, and so the rows are going north, let's say. So what this was is this is the actual protocol that we developed for the planting populations this year, for the 2011 planting populations. So we had 4 populations, 120, 140, 160, and 180. And the reason we did so many is because we did 3 before. And the growers that I talked to said we wanted to tighten those populations up a little bit. And so that's the reason we did that, was with some input from growers. And so one thing I want you to notice is that all 4 populations are compared against each other in a single replication or a block. They're all compared against each other in a relatively narrow area to take some of that field variability out of there. Well, and then they're compared against each other again in another narrow block, and again and again. We really like to see 4 replications if you can. 4 replications will take that field variability and that error out of the research. So, and this is one of the more complicated ones because you count those treatments. We had 4 treatments. A lot of times, if you're just comparing a new product, like a foliar fungicide or something versus a control, you only have 2 treatments. So it's a much easier design. This one was one of our more complicated. The other thing I just want to mention is look at how the order changes in the replications of the blocks. That's called randomization. And the reason you do that is, again, to make sure, just in case there's a gradient that goes along here, like a slope or a soil type change or something that goes across this direction, you're taking into that account by randomizing those in those blocks. And so there's no way that that should be a factor. So that's the way all of our designs are set up. So I just want to make you aware of that. There's the 14 trials that we looked at. And these trials did not come from Keith and I. These trials came from you, the growers. We met, Martin put together a real nice focus group up here in Sandusky, and we had a really nice group meet there for breakfast and got some ideas from them. There was a group down in Southwest Michigan, Southeast Michigan last year, prior to the planting season. But there's the things that we looked at. And so 14 trials, we looked at some of them at multiple locations. And that's what we're really shooting for if we can. Multiple locations, multiple years. That's going to add a lot of credibility, a lot of reliability to the results that we get. We broke them down. If you look at that at a glance, you can see that there's really a lot of work being done. Everything above this line is on soil fertility. And that's because of those three focus groups. That was the #1 issue, was are we fertilizing our beans correctly, or should we be doing something different? And so that's why we spent so much effort on fertility. Planting populations was a high priority, and then tillage was the next one. That was a big priority. So let's just go through some of the data. This is the ones that I'm going to be able to present today. We're going to look at a foliar fertilizer from Wilbur Ellis. We're going to look at a pop-up fertilizer from Nature's, planting populations, and then a really kind of a neat tillage trial that we did set down in Southwest Michigan. But it's really got some applicability here in your areas because you're so flat and level in much of the time. All right, so let's go into the planting population trial first. Those are the 4 populations. You saw what the layout of the field looked like. What I wanted to kind of emphasize with this is that these 4 of these sites were planted with split row planters, 15-inch split row planters. So what does that mean? It means that you're getting good seed metering. You're getting very good seed to soil contact. We're not just, what does Kip Colors call a drill? A controlled spill, doesn't he? So this is not done, these are not done with a controlled spill. These are done with good planting equipment, so please keep that in mind. 4 of the 6 sites were in 15-inch rows. All right, here's where our locations are. You notice none of those stars are kind of up where we are, so there's opportunities. If anybody wants to cooperate with the program, please see Martin, please see Bob or Phil or myself. Call the soybean office. There's just a number of ways. I actually brought a form with me that we'll pass out at lunch that if you want to participate, you can just fill out that and get it back to me. All right, so here's the data. We look at 120 is on the left, and we work our way on up to 180,000, and that's a planting population. And I'll talk about what our harvest populations look like in a minute. But so look at how level those bars are. You know, with that type of planting equipment, with this late start that we got this year, was there an opportunity to maybe cut back on your planting populations? It sure looks like it from this. You know, 120 yielded just as good, or you know, as 180 this year at those locations. You know, with that type of planting equipment. Look at how tight the statistics are. We only needed 1.6 bushels per acre difference to say a difference, and we couldn't show that. There's no difference there. Now, what happened to populations? These were taken 30 days after planting, so you know a lot of the mortality has happened by that time, the seedling diseases, insects, things like that. So we feel pretty confident on these. And these were done by a summer intern that we had, Kyle Miller. He came through and did all the counts. And so what do those mean? What kind of mortality did we have? Look at how straight that line is. It basically, it should be the same, and it is. We lost about 20% of our seed between planting and 30 days after planting. Where does 10% of that loss come from? Germination. Comes right out of the, you know, out of the bag. You're losing 10% of it. So that's actually pretty good. All right, so that's where we're at. Now, let's look at economics. What I did is I took the average yield from those, and they're essentially the same, keep in mind, and I multiplied that by 11.30 per bushel. By the way, who would you rather have market your beans? Remember what Christy had. Would you rather have Christy Sprague market your beans, or would you rather have me market your beans? She used a figure of 11.50, didn't she? So I would have lost to 20 cents, or 30, you know, so yeah, Christy, you want to work with Christy on that. But so 11.30. Seed cost, I used $50 per 140,000 seeds, and I know some of you can do better than that with your volume discounts and that, but that was what was given to me by some seed companies. So what I did is I took our gross minus our seed costs, and that's what we end up with then. So because our yields were essentially the same, and our seed costs continually go up as we increase the populations, that's our most profitable. You know, it's intuitive. Our lowest planting rate is the most profitable. That just puts some numbers to it. All right, now we wanted to again focus on the 15-inch row spacing because that's an increasing row spacing in Michigan. So we went back and we looked at the 2010 data and the 2011 data. We had 9 locations that were planted with 15-inch row split row planters. And we compared, but we only had 2 populations that overlapped, the 120,000 and the 160,000 over both years. But look at the 160,000, it is significantly higher based on our LSD than what the 120,000 is. Now let's look at the economics. So it gives us 1.4 bushel per acre better. Does it make us money? Well, using those same assumptions, it did. It gave us about 2 bushel per acre, or $2 per acre more. It's not a big difference. Is everybody aware of what Michigan State University's seeding recommendations are for soybeans? Let's start with narrow rows. Let's say we're planting in 7.5-inch rows. What should you be dropping? That's high. Based on for MSUE, that's high. That's a really good population. If you go farther east of here, Ontario would be pretty close to that. Even they're saying about 195,000. MSUE, assuming now, this is assuming that it's 90% germ, and maybe you were factoring in the germ. This is assuming 90% germ. We recommend 175,000. What about if I'm in 15-inch rows with a split row planter? What would MSUE say you should be dropping? About 150,000. And then if we're planting in 30-inch rows, what do you think you'd want to drop? 130,000. So that's kind of what the university recommends. All right, so there's our summary. Planting populations really didn't significantly affect soybean yields at 5 of the 6 locations. 1 location down in Hillsdale County, it did though. The 2 highest populations were significantly greater than the 2 lower populations, but they were not different from each other. And that person was in 15-inch rows. And then we showed the table, but really the only difference is the seed cost. So the lowest seeding rate was the most profitable. Now let's look at some of the fertilizer trials. And I'm only going to be able to show you 2 of those, but both of these were done pretty heavily up in this area, and I'll show you. The Taro Project really helped us out, as well as some of the growers. There was a lot of interest in pop-up fertilizer on soybeans, and this kind of surprised me, because when you read the literature about it, it says that soybeans do not respond to pop-up fertilizer. Plus, soybeans are more likely to get injured because of salt injury than what corn seed is, so we got to be careful with it. Okay? But the growers wanted it, so we looked at it at 8 locations. We used a product that was very low salt, a 220-18. We wanted something high in potassium. It was applied at 2 gallons per acre in 30-inch rows, 4 gallons per acre in 15-inch rows. Here's the locations. As I mentioned, this area was very well represented. The Taro Project accounted for 3 of those, but 2 of them here in Sanilac County were done outside of the Taro Project. So there's the locations. And here's the data across all locations, including the Taro projects. We averaged all those together, and you only gained about 0.3 of a bushel by using the pop-up fertilizer this year. I want to be sure and qualify this year. Think about this year. Was it an early planting season for you or a late planting season for you? Really late, okay? Now, when do you think you'd most likely see a response to pop-up fertilizer or starter fertilizer? Early or late? Early. So keep that in mind. When you're looking at the data, we had a late planting season. And all those planting dates are listed in the publication. There's a really nice table. It gives you the planting dates. It gives you the fertility background. And it gives you the CEC for each one of these locations. What is the table got? Basically, if you can imagine these columns being over here is what we're doing. But I really just want you to focus on the top line. The only reason I'm presenting Horst Bonner's data is because Horst used the exact same product we used, a 220-18, at 5 locations, and used a little different rate. He used one right in between ours, smack in the middle. But the untreated was 57 bushel. His 3 gallon of the pop-up was 57, exactly the same yield. If he added an inoculant onto it, he gained a little bit there, but it still was not significant. So when I talked to Horst about it, he was very adamant that there is, because last year he showed a 5 bushel increase at 1 location to that same treatment, the 220-18. So it's something we really need to continue to look at, I think in a season when we're planting earlier. Okay, Now let's look at the kind of the summary. We did gain 3.1 bushels. One of your cooperators up here, one of our cooperators up here in the thumb, gained 3.1 bushel, and that was definitely significant. So 12.5% of the time, it did give us an increase, and a nice one, 3.1 bushel. It did not affect the other trials. 7 out of the 8 times it didn't. But the thing that I was very happy to see is that salt injury, we did not lose any stand. Remember I mentioned Kyle Miller taking stand counts. He took stand counts all of these, and there really was no difference. We didn't damage the seed. So that was really good news, I thought. Now, along those lines, if you're thinking of putting pop-up fertilizer in contact with any crop, but especially with soybeans, this website is outstanding. I would really encourage you, if you don't jot it down here, please see me and I can get it to you. But it's just what it is it's an Excel spreadsheet, and you plug in all of the information that would determine whether or not that pop-up fertilizer is going to hurt your stand. Your soil moisture, your soil texture, the type of crop it is, the type of fertilizer, what level of risk are you willing to take, what's your tillage practices, things like that. You plug all that in, and it spits out a number at what the maximum amount of fertilizer you can put directly in contact with the seed and not damage the crop. It's really a powerful tool. So if you're thinking of using pop-up fertilizer on any crop, but especially soybeans, please see me if you don't get that site, or please use it. All right. Now let's look at a foliar fertilizer. There's a lot of interest still in foliar fertilizers. And this one was one that was tested by Wilbur Ellis before they even brought it to us. And they showed about a 2.5, 2.8 bushel increase by using this product with some of their in-house data. Well, we wanted to do it through some unbiased trials, and they wanted us to too, and they were very good about delivering it and providing the product. So it's called End-to-Band High-End. It's basically a high nitrogen product. It does have some other nutrients in there, but basically a high nitrogen fertilizer. One of the things we did this year to make sure that there was no confounding factors is we took the sprayers. When we did the control treatments, we drove the sprayers right through the control treatments also. So everything had tire tracks. We didn't want to have tire tracks be a confounding factor. Everything was trafficked. We applied 1 gallon per acre between the R2 and R4 growth stages. There's the locations, and again, very heavy up here in the thumb area. 3 of those are tear, and 1 of them was not. So we had those locations. Here's the yield advantage of it across all 8 locations. You can see 51.9 versus 51.4, half a bushel. What did we have to have? We had to have 0.9 tenths of a bushel, 9 tenths of a bushel for that to be significant. So it really was not significant at that point. So at one site though, Bob Battle did have one site, yes, okay, 5 minutes, sorry. Bob Battle did have one location up in the Taro Trials that did show that, and a significant increase. And when I visited with Bob about it, it was a stressed crop. It was a crop that was not, it wasn't his highest yielding one. It was a stressed crop, and as a matter of fact, it was showing manganese deficiency at the time of the application. So that was quite late. You think of R2, R4, boy, we'd really like to control manganese much before that. So it lost some potential there. All right, this is my last trial. This is the one I think that is going to have some interest up in this area. It's strip tillage. So those of you, how many of you plant your beans in 30-inch rows? I'd like to see a hand. 30-inch row beans. Okay? All right. This has got some real potential. We used a Dawn Pluribus strip till tool, and we built fall strips and we built spring strips, and we compared those to no-till. We only had one location down here in Southwest Michigan. This is the tool. It's a Dawn Pluribus, and it doesn't have a rigid shank like the Orthman or like the old Rawson strip zone builders, or there's a, boy, help me, there's a, Rogenbucks, didn't they build a tool like this, a strip till tool at one time? Yep. Okay, all right. Now, did your tool have a rigid shank?
Yes.
Yes. A lot of them do. Typically, that's what's in common. Now, this one doesn't. This one does the tillage with a fluted coulter, and the fluted coulter is like a miter box. If you think of this, it's tipped in this dimension, but it's also tipped in this dimension. So it's really on an angle, and it really throws soil. All the rest of the units, you just got a cutting coulter, you got some Martin type fingers, and then you've got this, and then you got these rolling baskets, or they act like a rolling basket. They're fins on the wheels. Okay, so that's the tool. Remember when I said that I will not touch your equipment? Guess what I did here? So you will not have, I'm not going to put you in that spot of just saying, don't stay away from my tools. This is what the soil looks like. Look at that seed bed. Is that beautiful or what? It's a sandy loam soil, and I know that's maybe a little bit coarser textured than what a lot of you found, but it's just, it really worked out nice. Here's the data. 59.1 bushel versus 55.5. Look at that. 3.6. We gained 3.6 bushels just by running that across the field. Do you think the grower's going to do that again? He definitely is. Now, when the grower and I, the producer and I talked about it, we were just going to do the spring strips versus no-till, and Keith, thanks to his wisdom, said that no, let's put a fall treatment in there. And the reason that that's valuable is think about your time management. If you can build these, if you got the right conditions and you can build these in the fall, you don't really give up any yield potential. You give up, I mean, those two are identical, and that the fall till is still better than the no-till. Temperatures are one of the biggest reasons for it. Look at that. Would you rather plant at 53 degrees, or would you want your soil to be 58, almost 59 degrees? And that's 2 days before planting. So really warmed up the soil nicely, and they are significantly different. So that's basically it. We compared the treatments, and the spring and the fall treatments were not significantly different from each other, but they did out-yield the no-till treatment. So that is a practice that's got some potential for you up in this area. That's basically, oh, I just want to thank, all of our sponsors and our cooperators first of all, but Nature's, Morales, Conklin, and Novozymes, they all helped us, Kyle Miller, and then Bob and Phil and Martin, and all the rest of my colleagues across the state that really put this together. So Extension was pretty heavily involved in the project as well. All right, thank you. Do you have any questions?